like we have some feedback here, so apologize about that. We'll try to get that figured out. Hello, everybody. I'm Ben Schneider, back from the West Coast, bringing you another episode of GRID Live Encore. We also have Kobe Lambeth in for Brandon Crosslin tonight. He's from the podium finish, as always, and Joshua Burch joining us as well for the first half of the show. Guys, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing very well. Oh.
Yeah, very hot over here in North Carolina. I got my fan right here. It's supposed to feel like 110 degrees tomorrow here, so really brutal heat, but excited to talk about some motorsports today.
Yeah, it's going to be 28 degrees here on Friday, so it's going to be another great run here in the UK.
Yeah, I've seen all over social media, people are talking about, I think a lot of people are going through some heat waves right now. Unfortunately, here in Delaware, it's still settled into the 80s, so it's not too bad at the moment. But Kobe, I know you're going to be joining us a little bit later on. Josh, I want to get into the F2 recap with you. I know you were quite a busy broadcaster this weekend with everything going on with Le Mans and Baku, and I wish Formula One would avoid scheduling those races to conflict with Le Mans, because it's such a big deal, and I wish it would give their drivers the freedom to do it. But in the meantime, we did have an F1 race. We also had an F2 race, so we want to go over that. And we'll pull the results for the sprint race up here and get right into it. Frederik Vesti took his maiden victory ahead of Johan Daruvala in what was an eventful sprint race, while Dennis Hauger was the one who inherited the feature win after a heartbreaking crash for Juri Vips at what looked set to be a dominant weekend coming undone there at the very end. So, Josh, what do you make of the entire race weekend? I must admit, I missed a lot of it because I was very busy covering the racing at Sonoma. And how frustrating was it for Vips to lose the race in that manner right at the very end?
Well, I don't blame you at all for missing it. It was a very busy weekend. And as you said, Le Mans 24-hour took priority for me as well, and did get to do the F2 races live as well. That's sadly all I saw of the races. But they were very good races, and they're very strong as well. Even if I couldn't shout a lot about it because my voice had been shot in the morning sessions. The sprint race was a very dramatic, as always, affair. Well done, Baku, is the saying, and it really did deliver. Every time Formula 2 goes there, we have a great race. Frederik Vesti taking the win as well. Daruvala in second place. Daruvala was so strong in that sprint race as well, constantly battling as well. At the safety car restarts, ducking and diving everywhere, trying to find a way through as well. But it was Vesti who was just up there, remained calm and got the positions. We did have a very scary crash in the sprint race. It delayed F1 qualifying by 15 minutes because the barrier down turn one was ripped off as well. Callum Williams had a side-on impact as well. Cars ran into the side of him as well. And thankfully, he got out and walked away. A testament to how stronger the cars have become with side-on impacts ever since the death of Antoine Hubert a couple of years ago. So that meant the race ended under yellow flags. It was on the last lap as well on a restart after the safety car. I think 4 safety cars in the last 10 laps as well. Absolutely insane as well. In the feature race on the Sunday morning, it was a few limited safety cars, but still very dramatic. The biggest one, as you said, came from Juri Vips, making contact at the castle section, ripping off the front suspension. Just a small little error can happen to anyone, and he crashed out from the lead of the race. That was disappointing for everybody because he was a very strong candidate there on race day. Dennis Hauger, though, coming through for Prema, taking the victory was good. But again, we saw Cordial retiring for the second race running, and you've got stats on that coming through next on in the script as well. But I think as well, 5-second time penalty for Jack Doohan for causing a collision, which forced several drivers out of the race right at the, I think, second to last lap when the safety car was out in the feature. So it was all chaos again. Very hard weekend to follow for Formula 2. But it set us up nicely as we head into Silverstone and the halfway stage of the year.
We have a question in the chat room from A Day in the Life, one of our regulars. Did you anticipate Frederik to get a win this early, Josh?
I didn't actually. Vesti has been quite popular and he has been quite good, but I didn't expect him to get a win this early as it was thought. And many people say he could have looked into it on Saturday, but he was performing very well. He was doing some great overtakes. And credit where credit's due. He's a deserving winner of Baku's race.
So you mentioned Cordial here. Obviously, that's the next question that I've got for you. I saw in the news today he's received a race ban because he has 12 penalty points on his license. And we talk a lot of times about drivers who are up to 8 or 9 and they have to be careful. But it's very rare, at least as far as I'm aware in Formula One, at least, that a driver actually goes over that 12 marker and triggers the race ban. So if you could explain to us, Josh, just how bad has this season gone for Amaury Cordial so far?
Well, think of Santino Ferrucci, Pastor Maldonado, Sergio Perez in the early days, and McGunnathan as well. Combine them together, and that is Cordial. He's a paid driver. He was brought a seat in Formula 2 as well. He has failed to get a podium, I think, in the last 14 races he's done. And even that is not even in Formula 2. Some of those as well, I think, is across different series. I don't think he's a bit like Carmen Jordan, who's never actually stood on a podium in any category he's been in as well. He has brought his way in to Formula 2. He has been useless the entire season. And to borrow a phrase from an old commentary of Murray Walker and Martin Brundle in Monaco when they're talking about Ricardo Rosset, many people are saying as well that maybe Cordial is not Formula material. And to kind of phrase what Martin replied to that, it's a fairly short debate. He's not a good racing driver. He is a danger to everybody. 2 big crashes. He caused the contact in the sprint race, which caused Callum Williams to go in the wall as well. He caused a secondary accident in the feature. I thought it was right he got that ban. He's been a walking disaster all season long, and personally, I don't think he'll come back. If the team need the money, then yes, but when the FIA are going to have money over performance? I mean, Van Amersfoort Racing is a team that doesn't really need that much money. They've got quite a bit of backing as well from elsewhere in motorsport.
Yeah, well, we have another comment here from A Day in the Life saying, I would like to see the FIA and Formula One try to reduce the influence of paid drivers that have no place there. And I think that's something that I agree with. At some point, it doesn't matter how much money you bring in. If you're not a competent racing driver at the very least, and, people like to joke about Lance Stroll and Nicholas Latifi. At the very least, they have had some solid runs and some moments of brilliance here and there. But when you get into the junior categories like Formula 2 and Formula 3, you can't necessarily say that about everybody that's ever stepped foot into one of those race cars.
Yeah, and to be fair, Baku is a challenging circuit, and it seems to always separate the drivers from those who have got the talent, those that don't have the talent. This weekend, it was a very bad weekend for those paid drivers. Lance Stroll, in the space of a minute, hitting the wall twice. The second time, putting him out of qualifying and causing a red flag. Nicholas Latifi as well, constant runs off the road as well, damaging part of his wing as well during the weekend. It was a constant problems. Cordial in F2, the same thing, running off, causing contacts as well. I think we need to start phasing out paid drivers, but the problem is, in the case of Nicholas Latifi, there's a rumour going around that he's going to have his last race in Canada, and that by the time he gets to Silverstone, Oscar Piastri is going to be in the seat at Williams because they're going to be getting money from Alpine and from the Red Bull and Ferrari side of things as well, with their drivers being in there. So Latifi could be on his way out after Canada, but that still has got Stroll. Stroll is a very talented driver. We've seen him on to get some great podiums. I mean, Baku 2017 springs to mind when he would have been second if it wasn't for the DRS that Bottas had. So Stroll's got the talent. He just needs a better car and to keep that hot head of his under control. I think this season as well, Lance has slipped back into the more cocky, rich boy, father owns the team type of thing as well. He started to get a little bit brash with his engineers and the team. He's not the charming, sweet lad we knew when he was first racing in Formula One with Williams. So it's getting to the point where we've got to close off these rich paid drivers because we've got so much talent that is being backlogged because people in Formula One, A, don't know when to quit, and B, pay to be there. I describe it as well, Ben, as well. I've thought about this earlier on, actually. Me and you could pay to be in a Formula 2 race. We don't have the talent to race there, but we could pay to be there. And that's the thing. Cash is king. And I don't like that about Formula One. That's why I'm really enjoying seeing the more high up teams, Red Bull, Ferrari, Mercedes, and McLaren, sticking with the fact is that their drivers are there on talent as well. And if you don't perform in those teams, i.e. Danny Ricciardo and Carlos Sainz, you could face the chopping block quite quickly as well. So, and it's certainly the case with Red Bull. We've seen in the past, they like to throw drivers out by halfway in the season as well. It's a bit like throwing the baby out with the bathwater. It's not developing their drivers. So there's pros and cons to both pay drivers and to those of professional drivers. But I'm sure you agree with me, Ben. We'd take a professional driver every single day of the week because they are better and they give us more entertainment in motorsport. And I'm still pushing through with my voice because I'm sounding like Winnie the Pooh at the moment, I believe.
Well, no worries. I know it was a very busy weekend for you. And I totally agree with you. I would not have the talent if I got behind the wheel of one of those cars. I'd actually just tried my friend Ethan Smith, who I was staying with in California this past week. He let me try iRacing for the first time, and it was not very good. I kept spinning out and making a bunch of mistakes. So I can only imagine how much of a disaster it would be if I tried to get behind the wheel of the real thing. Joe, our own leader here, Joe Samaniego, saying the FIA ladder system could use more work to reward performance than the current model. Well, we're going to talk in a minute about Indy Lights. And of course, they have the Road to Indy scholarship program to try to help offset that discrepancy that sometimes drivers face if they don't bring funding, but have the talent to be able to make it. Josh, do you think that that's something that the FIA should look into doing?
Absolutely, and I've said it before on grid shows as well, that I think the FIA should actually have their own team in Formula One. Let it be run by the Constructors' Champions and maybe the F2 season, but have a team where you have the F2 champion and the F2 runner-up from the last season race for a year in Formula One. If they show us what we got, they get picked up by another team. If they don't, then they go on to do other things. At least they've had a shot at Formula One to show what they could do. I think we have it in football, don't we? In both American football and British football as well, European football mainly. We've got that. You can go from League One, go up to the Premiership, and then you can be a Premiership and go back down to League Two. You can move around and have the development that you need. Motorsport's very limited in that fact as well. Yes, we've got the FIA structure, F4, F3, F2, F1, W Series sort of slot in between of F3 alongside it, but there's no clear progression through it as well. So I think the FIA should organise and have their own team or get a team in where you are running the F2 and F3 runner-up, and then the same in F2 for F3, F3 for even maybe W Series, and F4, like the champion from F4, the champion from W Series go into F3, and so on. Just make it easier to get up that ladder, because right now we're just waiting for the ice to melt in the middle of an ice age, and it's snowing outside, and everyone's getting covered in it as well. It's just we're frozen in time, and it's beginning to look bad when other series around the planet of racing as well are showing it can be done, and it has been doing very, very well as well. Best example I've ever seen of it as well, British Superbike Championship have the British Super Sport, and they go up immediately into the British Superbikes for the following season. So it can be done, it should be done, and in my opinion, it could be done very, very easily with the FIA running a team and calling it the development. I don't know, but maybe even if it's a contentious thing, don't let them run for points that first season. They're just there to show their talent. If teams say FIA can't run their own team, just let them go out there as a non-championship team just to prove they've got the talent. Something like that. But get them into Formula One and get them racing. Otherwise, we're losing so much talent. Pantano, I remember in a GP2 car, one of the best drivers I've ever seen from 2005 to 2008, stuck in GP2, never got a shot in Formula One, Giorgio Pantano. And that was a world champion lost as well. Sam Bird never got a shot. There's so much great talent, and we need to see it in the top tier in racing.
I completely agree. Before we move on to Indy Lights, I just want to answer this question here from Day in Life. I actually didn't participate in a race. I wasn't going to try to mess with Ethan's iRating at all. So I just took it out for a test session. I tested a stock car and an Indy car and even the Mercedes Formula One car from last year. And I've got to say, I was surprised at how challenging it was. And it definitely is more on the simulator side of things. It's still by definition a game over video. I'm sorry to upset the purists out there who don't want to call it a video game, but it was an interesting experience, but I think it only further solidifies the fact that it's too late for me to try to pursue a racing career at this point. But on that note, let's talk about some more real-life racing here, and let's move on to the Indy Lights series. They were in Road America along with IndyCar this weekend, and it was Christian Rasmussen who took the win in an epic weekend for Andretti Autosport. Stingray Robb and Hunter McElrea completed the podium, and a 1-2-3 sweep for Andretti on the podium. But the race was delayed a bit due to a frightening accident for Christian Bogle, who was launched into the air after hitting a curb, which sent his car into the catch fence. Bogle was fortunately okay, but the fence sustained extensive damage, which led to a lengthy repair process that forced the race, or the ending of the race rather, to be postponed until after the IndyCar Series race. So, Josh, I know we've talked about this, and we'll bring Kobe in here on this one as well. We've had several incidents now over the last several years where we've had drivers, involved in accidents, and in some cases even dealing with injuries after hitting curbs like this. Is it time that we maybe look at safety advancements and maybe try to get away from the curbing here?
Sausage curbs have no place in motorsport. That's it. End of. As well, think about everything we've seen just in the past 6 months. Abby Eaton in Kota in the W Series, launching over the curb at the back half of the track, slamming back down and breaking her back in the vertebrae as well, spending 3 months in a back brace. Voverend at the start of the race at turn 1, very lucky not to get any damage. She launched up in the air as well. Now, Alexander Peroni in 2019 at Monza, exit curb, launched up in the air and actually flew into the catch fencing as well. Very similar to what happened in the Indy Lights. At Road America, launched off the curb into the catch fencing. We were talking about it, weren't we, in Spain, in F2. There was a sausage curb that ran on the inside turn 1. It caused massive accident in the F2 and F3 races. And I was saying they need to remove it. They did remove it, and it was some great decisions. But sausage curbs are dangerous. I know the FIA say, they're there to enforce track limits. They're there so that drivers don't get an advantage. And everyone on Twitter, who's an armchair expert, goes, well, if drivers should be able to respect the track limits, they're the best in the world. If you get forced off there, it's going to hurt either way. So drivers should not be getting injured over some stupid sausage curbs when you can just put grass there or gravel there and it's a bigger deterrent. Don't injure the drivers. We know it's a safety risk. Get rid of the damn things. Give drivers some sort of safety thing back, because it's causing way too many injuries than it is solving them as well. And in the modern days of racing with the cars so low, we're seeing in many series now the proportioning errors as well, as aerodynamics start to take over. Ground effect comes back in more relevancy as well with modern cars. It's beginning to be a problem rather than a solution. A bit like how the Armco barriers, they were a great idea in the 70s, but we started to get a lot of deaths with them in the 90s and the early 2000s, and now we have safer barriers and Tech Pro barriers as well, instead of just pure Armco as well. So safety develops over time, and we need to remove these sausage curbs now and put them with something else. Personally, I like the idea of grass and gravel. Simple, old school, works best as well.
Yeah, and before I get into my first answer tonight, we have some comments in the chat room. And right here from Dana Love says, why is there a sausage curve in that location? It doesn't make sense to me. Yeah, it doesn't make sense to me either, a day in the life. I have no idea why there's a sausage curve there, but obviously, these sausage curves really causing a lot of issues. And we've actually seen sausage curves not just be an issue in open wheel racing, but NASCAR as well. Remember the very first race at the Charlotte Roval? We tore up a whole bunch of cars before the race even started because those NASCAR stock cars were getting launched in the air. I remember Bubba Wallace had a really hard crash in practice, tore up that number 43 car he was driving at the time. That was a really bad chicane on the backstretch. It was a high speed chicane, and I think after the first year, NASCAR really learned that was not a good idea, so they decided to slow it down by a lot, and we didn't see those same type of accidents. But the point still stands that those sausage curves, it really creates a lot of really crazy problems. And the turn 5 crash for Christian Bogle, that was a really strange one. And the thing that really surprised me the most about it is typically when you see an open wheel car going skywards into the catch fence, the car is going to break apart and it's going to spin around violently. But for Bogle, it rode the catch fence and then just came to a complete stop for Christian Bogle. He was extremely lucky because I feel like this is one of those really rare catch fence crashes where, for the most part, it wasn't as violent as it really could have been, because I expected Bogle to really start spinning to see like this type of catch fence crashes we saw when Robert Wickens was injured at Pocono. And I think Christian Bogle definitely walked away. He was obviously walked away unscathed, and it was really a lucky escape.
Yeah, I completely agree with you, Kobe. It was definitely a lucky escape there. And I think when you watch the replay, it was, obviously anytime a car goes into a catch fence, it's not a good situation. But I think that was probably the least bad catch fence crash that I've seen in a long time. So Bogle certainly fortunate to escape any serious injury there. We have a comment from Amber here. Are sausage curbs and turtles the same? They're interchangeable terms based on which region of racing you're talking about. So what we would call turtles here, what NASCAR fans got to know as turtles at the Charlotte Roval, Josh, all your friends over in Europe, they would not know what we're talking about. Probably if we said turtles, they almost exclusively refer to them as sausage curbs. I think that's the more
some more sleeping policeman is a very British term as well. With a Bobby sleeping in the car, and you just go past them, and then they call him sleeping policeman. So he's going. Oof. So let's say you were speeding, there's all be a copper at the side of every road in the 70s, and if you weren't speeding by, he'll go chasing after you. So sleeping policeman. I don't know if I explained that very well, but hopefully you got it.
Yeah, no, I think we got it. Yes. So yeah, that's basically that's your recap of the Indy Lights race, and we have a very brief recap coming up for you when it comes to ARCA. I think a lot of the ARCA attention was on Sonoma this weekend, where I was. I think people might have forgotten that there was actually not just an ARCA race, but an ARCA East combo race with the main ARCA series at Iowa Speedway. And Josh, I know you're going to be thrilled about this. Brandon Jones is 2 for 2 now. He won again. I don't know if you want to take 30 seconds here. I know we're going to let you go soon, but what do you have to say about this incredible upset and underdog story of Brandon Jones coming in and taking the win at Iowa in an ARCA race?
It's just ridiculous. You don't go back. It's just, it makes me cringe thinking about it, because I feel so sorry for everybody else who is actually trying to get further in their career, and then there's just perfect example. Okay, it's like say you're in your last year of school, and you go and it's your sports day, and instead of running with your own year group, you go and race against the kindergarten lot. You're going to win, and you're going to cheer about it. But everyone's looking at you thinking, what an absolute wally as well, because you're sat there and you're racing against people who are younger than you, who have got less experience than you. Of course you're going to win. Perfect example now. Let's use this in future. If you go back down from NASCAR to anything like the Xfinity, the trucks, ARCA, you're effectively running against preschool. You're at the end, even that, you're a fully grown adult racing against children. That's the mentality I want you to all think about. It is silly. It is stupid. It is beyond belief. And to be honest with you, with these reports, Ben, it's getting a bit like that scene in Family Guy, isn't it? What's the weather like, Ollie? Raining. Thanks, Ollie. It's like, who's won the ARCA? Oh, it's Brandon Jones. Thanks, Ollie. It's ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah, well, I know you're going to love what happened in a truck race as well, because Kyle Busch got his truck in there.
I'm done. Yeah. I'm done. I'm doing a Piers Morgan and walking off.
It was, Day in Life brings up a good point here. We'll talk, got to say, I don't know, Kobe, if you talked about this on the wrap-up show, but for a race call, the Toyota Say Mart 350, Toyota only had 25.
Oh, yeah, Ben, Toyota. I don't understand what went wrong there. And yeah, we did talk about it on the wrap-up show, starting with Bubba Wallace, had that engine failure. We know Bubba Wallace isn't really good at road course racing. That's the weakest part of it. That's the weakest part of his driving talent. But It was an early end of the day. Unfortunate for him, there was really nothing that Bubba could do with that. But the highest finish in Toyota was Kurt Busch. I believe he might have finished in 17th or 18th place, somewhere around there. And then the Joe Gibbs race, all four of them. I have no idea what happened. Like they were like down like in the mid 20s and below, and I just don't know what happened with Toyota. It was just a really, really, really bad race that they're certainly going to want to forget soon. And as you mentioned, Ben, for a race named the Toyota State Mark 350, and in California they have a large Toyota presence out there. That definitely not a good race weekend for Toyota in Sonoma.
Yeah, I think I saw a stat that it was I think their worst race on record in terms of their highest cars finishing position since 2007, which of course was their inaugural season. And Joe Gibbs Racing was still with Chevrolet, so they didn't have the powerhouse of Gibbs that they have had ever since their time in the Cup Series. Real quick before I don't want to totally dismiss the ARCA race, even though there isn't much to talk about because Brandon Jones won again. The Rev Racing teammates Nick Sanchez and Raja Cruz are now tied for the points lead. So if nothing else, there is a very good championship points battle happening in ARCA right now, and we'll continue to monitor that as the season goes on. ARCA East also only has 2 races left. They'll both be combo races with the main ARCA Menards series. And on that note, Josh, I know, like I said, it's been a long weekend for you. It's been a long weekend for all of us here at Grid Network, I think. What is your one shining moment from this motorsports weekend? I guess I'll make it open-ended to everything here because I don't believe you were on the wrap-up show either on Sunday.
No, I was collapsed at that point after I tried to do a wrap-up of Le Mans and kept saying instead of the Corvettes retiring, I said the Corbettes. So I was talking about Ronnie Corbett, the famous British comedian of the two Ronnies. I'm sending something though to Kobe tomorrow to play on the what is the Grid Tonight show, isn't it? So that's on tomorrow. So if you tune in, you'll be able to see that. Me ramble like Ted Kravitz. So hopefully you'll enjoy it. I'm taking a selfie stick and I'm doing a walk, so it should be nice. You should enjoy it. Let's see. Where do I want to wrap up with my one shining moment? Well, Le Mans was very, very good this year. Yes, the Toyotas dominated, but Glickenhaus and the Alpines sort of lost out. They sort of shot themselves in both faults. The battles, I think Corvette is a big disappointment for me. They could have won their last run and didn't. Porsche won it for GTE Pro, and that was of a lot of good emotion. Baku, heartbreak for Leclerc. It's hard to find a one shining moment because it was all a bit miserable. Everybody was very tired. My one shining moment then, it will go to, let's put it to Daniel Ricciardo. Good points this weekend as well. Proved he was not a number 2 at McLaren. Proved he's still got the racing talent. And it may have angered Lando. And I think it did a lot of good for Danny and his self-confidence to be seen as an equal in that team. So that was quite nice to see in the Azerbaijan race as well. And also, I think that started a rivalry now. I know Netflix like to say, oh, no, Lando and his teammate, there's all rivalry. No, I honestly think in Azerbaijan we saw the start of something in that McLaren team because I don't think Lando was happy with it.
And real quick on the note of Le Mans, we have a comment from Amber. Get Buemi and Hartley to Cup to replace Bell and Busch. Well, I don't know about that, but there is the Trackhouse Project 91 car now, and I know that they're going to be looking for global racing superstars. So after Kimi, that might be an option there.
Actually, on that note, Megan was in the commentary box this weekend for Le Mans. And usually when she's in the commentary box and Brendan Hartley is involved, Megan curses him. She gives him the commentator's curse. We know it happened a lot in 2018. Monaco, he got crashed into. Silverstone, he had that big crash. Belgium, she literally walked into the commentary box and he span. As well as Singapore, all those years. So it became a running joke every time Megan was doing the race commentary, something would happen to Brendan Hartley. She did Formula E once, and next race he got fired. So it was a running joke. Last year she was in the commentary and he didn't win. The car went in trouble. So this year it was quite nice to see Hartley win and Megan not curse him despite me telling about it. In fact, she had an off weekend because nothing happened to Scott McLaughlin as well. So Megan, I think, is a little bit disappointed that she's losing her commentator's curse. But personally, I'm just glad of not having to apologise and literally not being on Brandon Hamilton's Christmas list as well.
Toby, did you want to come in here?
Oh yeah, I was just gonna respond to what Amber said about Sebastian Buemi and Brendan Hartley to Cup. I vote for Kamui Kobayashi. I think it'd be really fun to see him run a NASCAR Cup car. I know he's obviously the team principal of Toyota Gazoo Race, a Toyota factory driver. 2311 Racing. They have a strong alliance with TRD Joe Gibbs Racing. If they wanted to bring out a third Toyota Camry for Watkins Glen, watch Kobayashi and Kimi Räikkönen race with us. That'd be really fun if that was able to happen, to see Kobayashi Räikkönen take on the best of the NASCAR Cup Series.
Yeah, Kamui Kobayashi is such a practical joker as well. I mean, I interviewed him and Mike Conway at the end of Silverstone in 2018 as well. Mike had just been disqualified, and so was Kamui from the race, and it was Mike's birthday as well. And Robert Wickens had just crashed as well, so he was in a really bad mood when we were talking to him, but he still gave us the time. But then Kamui Kobayashi came up behind as well, and he was all smiling and joking as well. And I put my arm around and said, "Come here, next time out, it's Fuji. You had a lot of good home success in motorsport. You're on the podium there as well in Formula One." I went to the mic and says, "Was I on the podium in Formula One? I don't seem to remember that." I was like, "Oh, don't do that to me, Kamui." He says, "No, I'm just joking, yeah." So he's a proper joker as well, and honestly, remains one of the only F1 drivers who I've actually hugged as well in that manner during a live interview on broadcasting. But yeah, Kamui Kobayashi would be amazing in that team project, one alongside Räikkönen. You'd get Räikkönen, who would just talk like this quite a lot of the time, and then you'd have Kamui Kobayashi getting all in there, throwing himself in and making the practical jokes. So that's a good lineup, actually. I want to see that happen so much now.
I'm not saying anything other than everybody that's driven a Trackhouse Cup car this year has won on a road course. So look forward to Watkins Glen here with Kimi Räikkönen. I think it'd be a tall order for him to win the race, but I think that there's certainly the chance for him to exceed expectations. I think people are maybe counting him out, remembering the little stint that he did in 2011 at the Charlotte Oval. And, obviously not having any experience in that before. I don't know how much he's going to be able to take from that. That's going to help him in the Cup car at Watkins Glen, because it's so much has changed in the last 11 years. It's a completely different track as well. But I think you might see some surprises from it.
One thing I was like,
I said, based on how well those Trackhouse cars are performing this year on the road courses, I think Kimi Räikkönen could potentially get a top 20, maybe a top 15. I think that would be a really good day for Kimi Räikkönen, like you were saying, Ben. It's definitely a tall order to just step into a one-off like this and try to go out there and expect Kimi Räikkönen to win the race. He doesn't have a lot of stock car racing experience. He has a little bit, but probably not enough to just come in and be competitive. I know we've had Joey Hand running a road course race in the Cup car. He's going to be running all the road course races for Rick Ware Racing. Joey Hand is well known for performance, factory driver. I believe he ran the Charlotte Roval last year for Rick Ware, and then all the road courses this year, and he ran extremely well. But he got a top 20 finish at Sonoma. So I believe all for drivers who are coming in as the road course ringers that don't have a lot of experience in the stock cars, I think the top 20 could certainly be possible. And Rick Ware certainly stepped up their game this year, more closely aligned with Stewart Haas Racing and Ford Performance. So Joey Ham was able to get a car where he was capable of fighting the likes of Brad Keselowski. So I'm in front of Austin Cindric at one point, who had a top 5. So I really think for drivers like Han, Kimi Räikkönen, I think a top 20, top 15 certainly possible.
Yeah, I just had somebody text me saying when I was unfortunately a bit of hay fever, and when I was doing my nose, it looked like Amber Heard when she was on the trial stand, and people said, "Yeah, just making sure that they've taken the photograph." Yeah, okay, good. Yeah, I've got photographers. Yeah, well, I just want to say with Kimi Räikkönen as well, immensely talented driver, not just in the fact he's a F1 World Champion, all those races he's won, but the fact that he's Finnish. And in Finland as well, to pass your driving test, you have to do so much more than anywhere else in the world. You do how to control the car if it spins. Right, you do practically ice driving, sleep driving as well, rain driving, everything to pass your test. It takes 5 years to get a license, driving license in Finland as well, compared to the rest of the world. So Kimi has, as he said in the interview and in his book, actually, he took all those skills as well and put it into his racing career. It's made him very adaptable to different machinery. So I reckon you're both right. We're going to see something very interesting from Kimi when he gets to Watkins Glen. And I'll be watching that one as well. I think I might even be on the call, actually. I'm not too sure about that one when they hit Watkins Glen, if it is on USRN. So I'm doing one of them at some point this year.
Certainly a lot to look forward to. Josh, we will let you go and get some rest. Thanks as always for
Thank
coming
you.
on the Encore show, and we will see you soon.
Absolutely. See you both in Canada.
Sounds good. All right. Well, let's move on now to a series that I was at, Sonoma's ARCA West race. And let's talk about Jake Drew, somebody that I think has a lot to prove this season and has done very, very well. He won, of course, in Portland, and he doubled down on the road courses on back-to-back weekends here. He backed up his Portland win with another win at Sonoma. It was a pretty chaotic race. Colby Howard ended up sneaking through for second. And how about this? 61-year-old veteran Dale Quarterly, six-time East Series winner. He finished in third place. That's his best result in the West Series since a runner-up at Irwindale in 2004. Now, Drew now holds a commanding 35-point lead over Todd Souza as the series approaches the halfway point in the season, suggesting that he could be on track for redemption following last year's heartbreaking loss at Phoenix. If you recall, that was an epic championship battle that had 7 drivers mathematically eligible, 5 drivers separated by only 7 points. It came down on the wire. Drew crossed the line a lot like Felipe Massa, thinking he had a championship. Jesse Love passed, ironically, his teammate at the time, Trevor Huddleston, on the last lap to clinch the championship for himself. So Jake Drew certainly as hungry as ever for a title, and he looks like he might be well on his way to earning that this year. Now, the race was shortened, not much unlike what we saw at Talladega, and this was a point of controversy for some fans here. And a number of incidents contributed to that, as I mentioned, but with Cup practice approaching, ARCA officials stepped in. They simply decided to end the race under the last caution. There was a little bit of controversy over whether or not they were going to go green-white checkered or green and white at the same time, and then the checkered flag. As the drivers were forming up for a double file restart, ARCA simply threw the checkered flag and ended it so that the Cup cars could come on and practice. Now, as I mentioned, we saw a similar thing at Talladega when the TV window was running up against the Xfinity Series race. So, Kobe, this begs the question, does ARCA need a resolution to avoid shortened races at companion events? And could they maybe do what Indy Lights did just this weekend and earlier this year in Indianapolis, resume the race after the main event?
Well, Ben, I really like what Indy Lights does. I know we saw that happen at Road America when Christian Bogle had his crash. They were worried that they weren't going to be able to get everything finished in time before the Sancio Grand Prix at Road America, the NTT IndyCar Series race. So instead of just saying the race is over, the driver out front is your winner, that they decided to finish the race after the IndyCar race ended, which I think was a really smart idea, and it was fair to all of the drivers. I wasn't really a big fan of what ARCA did, just simply deciding to end the race right there. And I also think that this is a problem. I know, bringing the Truck Series back out west to Sonoma. I know it's been a long time since the Truck Series have been that far west to race. I believe the last time the Truck Series went that far was back in I believe it was the 2000s when they were still racing at Auto Club Speedway. So it's been a very long time. I know it costs the Truck Series a lot of money to go that far out west, especially the smaller teams in the garage. So I'm not really sure why we need to have the Truck Series at Sonoma. I know it's like a blast from the past seeing it there. Thought saw some good moments in the truck race, but when you're having NASCAR Cup Series qualifying, NASCAR Camping World Truck Series racing, and also try to put in our ARCA West race, then it really becomes hard. And when I saw that the West race was going to be squeezed in between, I was thinking that that's probably not going to be a good idea at all. And I like to see ARCA do something similar to Indy Lights. And Ben, you can speak better to this than I am, but I believe on the West Coast you still had some sunlight out there at Sonoma after the truck race ended. So I was wondering if the truck race finished, do you believe there was enough sunlight where they could have potentially restarted the race? Maybe not run all the laps that were remaining, but at least a handful, like a set handful.
Honestly, I think they could have done it after Cup practice. I think there was some downtime between the Cup practice session and when the truck race actually started. It was a very late start for the Truck Series race. The truck race actually started, at around, I guess it was 4:30 local time, which is, I think, around the time the Cup Series race ended on Sunday. So I think there was some downtime between those two sessions there with how late the Truck Series race was starting. That might have been an option. You only had 8 laps to run. So I think, or if you wanted to play it safe and not have to worry about, getting to 2 to go and then having to go off air so that the Truck Series could go on as scheduled, you could maybe have scheduled the truck race a little bit earlier than that and then had some time banked in, for the West cars to finish at the end of the day. Or you could have just started the West race a little bit earlier, knowing that, there's a lot of younger drivers in the West Series that are a little bit over aggressive sometimes. You're probably going to get some cautions. I feel like the scheduling, should have been done a little bit better. We said the same thing at Talladega when we went through all of that. I think Portland was an interesting situation as well. That was, I think, more of a judgment call. Obviously, the West race was scheduled to happen after the Xfinity race last weekend. And, I think just with the weather, obviously the race was going by slower than it would have in the dry. And there was more, it looked like there was more rain coming. In reality, I think, the next hour or so after the race ended wasn't too bad. So they probably could have kept going, certainly have the daylight to keep going. But I think, everybody was just kind of willing to get out of there a little bit early for that one with how bad the conditions were at its worst. But certainly something that ARCA, I think, needs to look at. I like what IndyCar does and what Formula One does when they know that the race isn't going to be under their 2-hour time limit or whatever. They go to a timed race and they make that very clear with, a decent amount of time left to go. So you're not racing, like we were at Talladega, where any lap could be the last lap because as soon as they throw a caution, they're throwing the checkered. Or, it could be this could be the last caution. We could restart the race. We might not restart the race. And okay, we're not going to restart the race because the Cup cars have to come out for practice and we're deciding all of this on the fly. I'm not a fan of that. I think there should be a contingency plan in place when the races go long. I understand that TV is very powerful and they have the rights to the track to broadcast Cup Series practice. I think that takes precedence over the ARCA West race, as much as I hate to admit it, because I do really like the ARCA West series. But I think, I'm not disputing the importance of that. I just think that there needs to be a contingency plan in place rather than making these decisions on the fly. And, like you said, Indy Lights could be one of those solutions, or we could just schedule it a little bit better and bank a little bit more time, schedule our time more wisely to avoid a situation like this from happening in the future. Now, before we move on to the Truck Series, I do want to mention real quick, I was able to catch up with Bridget Burgess again after the race. We'll have more on how her race went on Thursday's Women in Motorsports show. She was able to get another top 10, but it was probably not as strong of a race as she was hoping for. And like I said, we'll cover that more on Thursday. In the meantime, let's move on to the Truck Series race. And as I mentioned, while Josh was still on the show, he probably wasn't too thrilled with the result based on the opinions he's given over the last few weeks. But it was Kyle Busch making his last start of the season and taking the win. He maintains that streak going back to 2012, I think was the last Truck Series season, the year after he had that dust up with Hornaday at Texas, that he did not win a Truck Series race. Of course, he only did a few truck races that year, so didn't get as many opportunities. But Kyle has kept this streak going now. It was his last opportunity, and he got it done. But that wasn't the biggest story coming into the race weekend. The biggest story in the Truck Series was Carson Hocevar, who was still coming off of that leg injury and subsequent surgery that he had to have to repair his leg after a nasty crash last weekend at Gateway. Hocevar toughed it out and actually ended up taking pole position. He did spin at the end of his qualifying lap, so that forced him to start at the back of the field. Even though the team didn't go to a backup truck, they made enough adjustments to the point where NASCAR made them start at the back anyway. He'd go on to run roughly the first half of the first stage before he was relieved by Daniel Suarez, who I think was a good replacement driver based on what we saw on Sunday. But Kobe, there's obviously, a lot of discussion around athletes competing with injuries these days, particularly the concussion issue. But in an era where we take these things more seriously than ever, were you surprised that Hocevar was allowed to qualify and eventually race? And do you have a problem with that on a personal level?
Well, Ben, I gotta say, Carson Hocevar is one tough customer. I was very surprised that he was able to run for as long as he did. I know he's obviously, didn't, as he said, he didn't run the full race. He ended up doing a sports car style driver change with Daniel Suarez, getting in that car. But for Hocevar to have the motivation, to go out there, get in the car right after having surgery, only a few days after he had surgery on the broken bone in his leg, and most people, they're not going to get behind the wheel of a race car when they break a bone and have surgery. Remember Kyle Busch? He missed a handful of races the year he won the NASCAR Cup Series championship when he had that scary wreck hard into the inside wall at Daytona International Speedway in that Xfinity race that he was competing in that day. Kyle Busch took a lot of time to get back to racing, but Hocevar, I know it's certainly different under different set of circumstances and different different injuries there for Kyle and for Hocevar to be able to get back in the seat of that race car. It really just shows us how tough he is. And of course, there's always going to be a risk getting back in a car. And I think he might have some trouble this weekend with the truck race because I thought road course going to be challenging for him, and he put it on pole despite crashing. Thought that was a really good lap for Hocevar before it all went wrong there. But this week they're going to be on the dirt at Knoxville. That's going to require a lot more movement in that leg that he injured. So it's interesting to see what Nice Motorsports is going to have planned for this week. Is Carson going to try to run the whole dirt race in Knoxville, or are we going to try to bring in a dirt track ringer like a Chris Windham or something, someone who has a lot of laps at Knoxville Raceway to try to get Carson those championship points? Right now, Carson looks to be safe in the championship at this point, and he certainly doesn't want to lose. He definitely doesn't want to miss a race and not get any championship points, because then there's going to be a lot more pressure on him to try to make the playoffs. And you also asked me, Ben, do I have a problem with it? Well, it's really tough to say, because as I mentioned, there's always going to be a risk that you could aggravate the injury again, and then you'll miss even more time than what you could have missed. I know we saw Mark Marquez when he had that first surgery on his arm. He tried to come back immediately, made the injury worse, and then he ended up missing a whole chunk of time. And we certainly don't want to see the exact same thing happen with Carson Hocevar. So, and at the end of the day, NASCAR was okay with it. Carson's willing to do it, and he understands the consequences. So if Carson's able to go out there and compete with no more issues, fantastic. And if Carson ends up getting in a crash and ends up injuring that leg further, that's an unfortunate consequence we'll just have to live with.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you. I think I think we were all a little bit concerned, especially seeing how much Carson was struggling at the beginning of the race, and or at the beginning of the race weekend rather, showing us just how tough it was for him to even walk and get in the car. But then clearly when he was in the car, I don't know if the adrenaline takes over or what the deal is, but it was certainly an admirable performance to put it on pole and to tough it out for as long as he did. And you see Hocevar listed here in 6th place. Of course, the driver that starts the race gets credit for the finish. So Suarez, even though the fact that he lost a couple of laps making the driver change, was able to drive back up through the field, get a couple of free passes, and drive all the way back up to 6th place and give Hocevar 6th place points, which is huge for the championship as well. And we have a couple of comments coming in here from the chat room from A Day in the Life, who says, I think it's a case-by-case and driver desire with medical opinion. I tend to agree with that. I think you can't just make a blanket statement when you're talking about things like this. I think it's always going to come down to a case-by-case basis, and you have to look at how severe the injury is before you make that judgment call. Joe Samaniego saying, when I listened to Larry McReynolds on Sirius XM, he said he hated when Davey Allison drove injured. When Marquez re-injured himself, many suspected he came back too soon. Kobe, I know you were bringing that up as well. I have changed from not having a problem to being concerned. And I think a lot of people have. It's kind of cool to go back and look at the pictures with Ricky Rudd, taping his eyebrows or taping his eyes open and, toughing it out. But I think, when you consider the long-term effects of injuries, and especially the chance that you take racing on an injury and making it worse, sometimes you have to weigh whether or not it's worth it or not, especially when it comes to something as serious as a concussion. And of course, Humperdinck saying as well, the biggest danger is another accident. Of course, day in the life, Mark Marquez could have been nasty if he crashed with that broken shoulder. And completely agree with you there. I think we can all agree at this point, Marquez probably rushed back a little bit too soon. And Amber saying Marquez is still not the same. I think, obviously MotoGP is not one of the series that I follow most, but I do remember hearing Mark Marquez's name quite a bit. I think he was even our grid ranking champion one year, and, very dominant in the MotoGP series. And he still has the talent, and he still wins from time to time, but certainly not on the level that he was before the accident. So there's a lot to take in here, a lot to think about and discuss. I'm sure this isn't the last time that we're going to have these debates, as safe as the race cars are these days. Unfortunately, injuries are still a part of the sport. But Kobe, on a more positive note, what is your one shining moment from the feeder series and, of course, all the action at Sonoma this weekend?
Well, my one shining moment, we just talked about it, and definitely has to go to Carson Hocevar for toughing it out. Is it the best decision that he's making right now? I'm not really sure. I mean, he's still getting those valuable championship points. So until he's able to heal a lot more, he'll heal that broken bone from the surgery. Carson, he might have to try to do it sports car style for the next few races or so, where he'll start the race so he gets the points, and then get another driver to get in that truck and try to get him a really decent finish and get a solid points day. So I definitely give kudos to Carson for being this dedicated, this committed to the championship, to Nice Motorsports, and being the best that he can possibly be. It shows there's a lot of fire and desire in him, that he wants this badly. He wants to be in NASCAR for many years to come, and I think the attitude that he showed is really remarkable. And I guarantee you, Ben, a lot of these drivers wouldn't have done what Carson would have done. They would have had searching. They would have taken a playoff waiver and sat out a little bit. But with the NASCAR Camping World Truck Series season, we're actually getting close to the playoffs starting there, and looking at the schedule, that's actually really surprising to me. It seems like we're starting the playoffs just a little bit earlier this year, if I'm correct. So right now, Carson, he's looking good right now, points wise, to be in the playoffs, and he definitely doesn't want to lose that. I have a feeling if this happened a little bit earlier in the season, maybe Carson would miss a race or so, take a playoff waiver, then try to come back. But overall, I thought it was really a gutsy performance to go out there, put the truck on the pole, as we mentioned, unfortunately crashed it, and then the Nice Motorsports was able to fix it up. He went out there, ran some laps, and got out for Suarez. And it's gonna be interesting to see what as I mentioned, what the plan's gonna be for this weekend on the dirt at Knoxville Raceway. And I would Carson Hocevar, my one shining moment.
I completely agree with you. It's definitely worthy of a one shining moment there. I know you mentioned on the wrap-up show yesterday something that Amber just mentioned in the chat here, Daniel Suarez's win, and I certainly want to give a one shining moment to him as well. Certainly a long time coming for him, and I know he was very emotional in the media center talking about how much it meant to him and the drive for diversity allowing him to get to this point. So victory for him and a victory for the entire sport and the entire racing community as well. A very popular winner on Sunday. And thank you, Joe, as well. Mark Marquez, the only two-time grid ranking world champion. So certainly a talented competitor, and still wishing him nothing but the best as he continues to recover from some of the injuries that he sustained. My one shining moment, I mentioned it very briefly. It's somebody that I had the pleasure of meeting several years ago when I went to the last K&N East race in New Jersey Motorsports Park. Dale Quarterly was on the grid that day. Somebody that's a very talented road racer, and not just on four wheels, but on two wheels as well. They were bringing that up during the race weekend, that he's a champion at Sonoma on two wheels, as well as four now with his third place finish this weekend. Great to see somebody still in his early 60s, still with the skills and the ability to wheel an ARCA car around the Sonoma Raceway and bring it home to a podium finish. Simply incredible, and a great weekend for him. And I heard Luis Torres was able to catch up with him from Sonoma shortly after the race. And he mentioned he's running Mid-Ohio, which is great to see. So another opportunity for him on a road course. And before we go into the closing, Kobe, we have a comment from A Day in the Life asking a question. I don't have the schedule in front of me, but I think you can answer it.
Oh yeah, A Day in the Life asking IRPs. You're wondering if that's the first playoff race or the last race in the regular season when the NASCAR Camping World Truck Series goes to Lucas Oil Indianapolis Raceway Park IRP. That'll be on July 29th, and that's the very first race this year's NASCAR Camping World Truck Series playoffs. Yeah, we have 1, 2, 3, 4 races before the playoffs. Got the Knoxville Raceway on the dirt this week. Unfortunately, that's going to be conflicting with SRX at Five Flat Speedway. Really hate that's happening, but it is what it is. And then the following weekend after Knoxville, we got the Nashville Super Speedway, and then July 9th, the Truck Series is going to be running on the road course at Mid-Ohio, and then the final race before the playoffs is going to be July 23rd. It's going to be at the Tricky Triangle at Pocono Raceway, and then we have Lucas Oil, Indianapolis Raceway Park, Richmond, Kansas, Bristol, Talladega, Homestead, and then ending the season at Phoenix. Yeah, so playoffs really coming up fast in the NASCAR Camping World Truck Series. We're gonna know who the playoff contenders are by the end of next month. That's really crazy to say. We're just really flying through 2022.
Yeah, it is kind of weird that the playoffs are starting in July, so I don't know. Maybe there's some scheduling that NASCAR needs to look at there to maybe bring the playoff starts a little bit closer together, because that is going to be a bit of a weird feeling there. But I know we're in a stretch of several consecutive race weekends for trucks, so we are adding up these races very quickly here. So something interesting for the 2023 scheduling committee to maybe think about as they put the schedule together. I'm sure that the process is almost completed by now, but it is kind of weird that we're talking about the playoffs this early with this many months still left in the season. But who knows what's going to happen in the future. I know there's still some imperfections in the schedule and some workarounds that we need to make, but who knows what's going to happen in the future. In the meantime, thank you all for watching another episode of GRID Live Encore. And if you like what you saw tonight, make sure you subscribe to GRID Network right here on YouTube. We're on all social media platforms, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. If you really like what you saw, you can consider investing in our Patreon. And as always, thank you to Colin, Deshelle, Mark, and Robin who have already done so. If you'd rather make a one-time donation, you can buy me a coffee for any on-air talent here at GRID Network. And as always, thanks to Edward, Amber, and Zachary who have already done that. Any amount will help us continue to grow this motorsports media outlet here at GRID Network. Finally, thanks as always to our sponsor, Public.com, the stock market social media home. Public.com allows you to connect with your friends, make new friends, and use tools to learn how to invest in the stock market. You can also use the referral code you see on the screen there, GRIDNET, for $5 in free stock from Public.com. Now, tomorrow, Kobe, you will be back with Adam hosting Grid Tonight, so we'll look forward to that. On Thursday, I'll be hopefully be joining Joe Samniego and Daniel Zeri for the Women in Motorsports program. And as always, stay tuned for more GRID Live coverage throughout the week. We're kind of back on a regular schedule now with me being back here on the East Coast. Kobe, do you have any final thoughts before we sign off for the night?
Just want to preview what we're going to talk about tomorrow night on Grid Tonight. We're going to do a recap of the 24 Hours of Le Mans, a lot to talk about there. And we're also going to do a preview for the SRX race at Five Flag Speedway. Going to be really exciting. Got some exciting names in SRX this year. We got Rocket Man, Ryan Newman. It's going to be interesting to see if he'll be as hard to pass in an SRX car as he was in a NASCAR stock car. We're gonna have Ryan Hunter-Reay from IndyCar as well. Tony Stewart's back. It's really going to be a lot of fun in SRX, and hopefully we'll see some really great stories this year. Kind of like last year, we saw with Doug Coby winning the very first SRX race in series history at Stafford, and then that was able to help him make his NASCAR Camping World Truck Series debut. The series also put Ernie Francis Jr. on that map as well, and that ended up helping him get in contact with Roger Penske to put him in Indy Lights. I know Ernie's not really having a great rookie year in Indy Lights, but as you've said, Ben, and we've talked about this on the wrap up show as well, and mentioning Suarez, don't write off a driver too soon because they just need some experience. Ernie Francis had some real good open wheel success in the Formula Regionals Americas Championship, but it just hasn't clicked in Indy Lights yet. So maybe Roger Penske will be really patient with Ernie and give him another year in Indy Lights to see what he can really do. So SRX can really create a lot of great opportunities for drivers all around.
Certainly going to be a lot of fans paying attention to that and the entire SRX season, which kicks off this week. So be sure you stay tuned for Grid Tonight tomorrow and all our Grid programming throughout the rest of the week here on Grid Network. For Kobe Lambeth from the Podium Finish, for Joshua Burch, I'm Ben Schneider. Thanks as always for watching. Have a wonderful rest of your week.
Don't be an anonymous investor. Join the stock market social media platform, Public.com. Invest any amount of money and share with friends and new friends. Discover new opportunities, such as new companies and potential business partners, and useful tools for beginners, and share your experience with friends on Public.com. Link in the video description gets you $5 for being a Grid Network viewer. Use the referral code GRIDNET for your free $5 to invest. Start investing and networking on Public.com.